How y'all doing out there, America? Thank you for tuning in. Now today I want to talk a little bit about America freedom. Now America, our freedom is at hand. Yes, our freedom is at hand. Especially if we don't wake up and pay attention to what's going on, we're going to be consumed in all the mess and destruction that's about to come. They're setting up for it. Look at what's going on around you. Look at the laws that the president is putting into place. You still got heavy racism still going on till today. Now, and if you think that slavery don't exist, you need to wake up. Slavery still do exist. It's just more modern. That's all. But it still do exist. And these European high powers that's over the Americas, controlling America, yes, they are very racist. And we need to understand that. Regardless of whether you want to believe it or not, it is what it is. And that's the truth. Now, we are actually in the Middle East, provoking war with Iran. Trump done moved all of the U.S., all the U.S. citizens of the American embassy in Iraq. They moved all of them out, setting up military troops there. And Trump is aiming to send over 1 million troops into Iraq so that they can start war with Iran. That's their whole main focus, to start war with Iran. And then if you go and look at what's going on in Venezuela, it's chaos in Venezuela. And the same people that's doing that in Venezuela is the same owners that's over America. So they doing that to the people in Venezuela. Don't think that they won't do it to you here in America, because it's actually coming. And they setting up for it. You just not paying attention and not understanding what's going on. But they're doing it. Look at the censorship that's going around on the internet. Oh yeah, it's here. You just haven't woke up yet to it, or paid it no attention. But it is most definitely here, and they're doing it. And us provoking war with Iran is going to bomb America. And we need to understand that. Iran is going to bomb America. You have right now the Chinese, the Russia, Iran, and the Venezuela together. They're going to bomb us. And they are, and they definitely setting up for it. And not only that, you have China, which our army can't even, our numbers don't even add up to China alone. Then you have Iran and Russia and Venezuela. Come on. We're a super country, but not that super. And war is going on. And the Iranians, since the Iranian is helping out the Venezuelans, put them right in the United States backyard for them to shoot missiles and attack, which they are going to do. Just be prepared for it. Now, I have an article right here to confirm that. It came out on Express News. Russian nukes in Venezuela. U.S. make bombshell claims of secret Kremlin plots amid World War III fears. A U.S. congressman has stunned the world by claiming that Russia has secretly installed a base for nuclear weapons in Venezuela, amid rising tensions in the socialist country. Russia has installed nuclear missiles in Venezuela, according to a U.S. Republican Congress, as tensions continue to mount in the country. The shock claim is resentment of the Cuban Missile Crisis during the Cold War, when nuclear war nearby broke out between Russia and the U.S. over Russian military bases in Cuba. Republican Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart made the bombshell claim days after Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro squashed a coup attempt from opposition leader Juan Guaido. Speaking to Tucker Carlson on Fox News, Mr. Diaz-Balart made the astonishing claims that, if true, would risk sparking a nuclear war in the Americas. However, the Republican congressman did not offer any concrete evidence for this response. He told Fox News that Russia, Chinese, Iran, and the military were already in Venezuela and could use the country as a platform to attack the United States, which they are going to utilize. They are going to utilize Venezuela to attack the United States. While the United States, the crisis that's going on in Venezuela right now is due to America and other allies that's trying to take their oil. Yes, Venezuela have the #1 oil reserve in the nation, and that's what they're after. That's what Trump administration is after, Venezuela oil. That's why they have that crisis there. Man, this whole World War III, the whole World War III agenda is on the civilians of the countries throughout the earth. The World War III is an attack on the civilians. That's what this whole war is about. This World War III war is an attack on the civilians, believe it or not. And in America, they already are setting up for it, believe it or not. And their whole thing is to depopulate us. That's the whole agenda to the New World Order, is to depopulate us in order for their agenda to go about, which is way much bigger than that. Now, we see we already is under a national emergency. Yes. And do you understand what the powers that the president has under a national emergency? Especially going into the next election. Trump is trying to get this election, which Trump will win the next election. That's the whole reason he put the country under a national emergency, so that he can take over things, just how the president is doing over there in China. Same thing Trump is trying to do. That's why all of this must happen, so that he can win that next election. Yes, and I'm going to go over that a little bit in detail. Now, just last month, Trump declared an executive order on EMP. Now, Trump already knows that the Venezuelan is going to bomb up. The Iranian is going to bomb us. That was the whole reason for the concept that the national presidency alert came in to everybody's phones on that day. The national president emergency that came in everybody's phone like an Amber Alert. It's the whole reason for that, so that they can link with the E11 chip that's in the phone. Now the president has control over that. Now he has access to everything you do on your mobile phone. Everything, which they are just storing it into a federal database of you, which they are secretly invading on your privacy. Yes, through your mobile phone, through your laptop. You have laptops, even smart, anything smart. It's an agenda to secretly get information about you. Now, just May 15, 2019, Trump declares a national emergency over threats against U.S. technology. They're going to cut the lights off, y'all. And Trump is already warning us by the moves that he's making. If you just pay attention to him, it is going to happen. It's an attack directly on the civilians. This World War III is an attack on you. If you look around, that's why you think the grocery stores, the Winn-Dixie's and other Walmarts and other grocery stores is closing down. All these other outlets in the mall and other stores is closing down. It's a war tactic. It's a war tactic. You cut off their supplies, their food and water. It's easy. You weaken the population, and it's easy to attack them, especially with the Black African Americans and the Latinos that's in the U.S. They need this because we are a force together. That's why we're so divided, because they need us divided, because together we are a force that cannot reckon. In fact, we share the same blood. Blacks and Latinos, blacks, African American, Haitian. Now, we are under a national emergency, like I mentioned earlier. And this is what a president can do under a national emergency. The alarmist scope the president emergency power, from seizing control of the internet to declaring martial law. President Trump may legally do all kinds of extraordinary things. In the weeks leading up to 2018 midterm election, President Donald Trump reached deep into his arsenal to try to deliver votes to Republicans. Most of his weapons were featuring a mix of lies and false inducement claims that every congressional Democrat has signed onto an open border bill. None had. That liberals were forming violent mobs. They weren't. That 10% tax cut for the middle class was somehow passed Congress was out of session. Now, the president has the power of declaring martial law and taking over the communication system, like I mentioned earlier with the phone during the national presidential alert. He's able to do all of that under a national emergency. He can override the Supreme Court under a national emergency to a certain degree by majority of the vote, which he will get. And then you also have a report that was put out by CBS News. News steadily claims 43 states expose millions to dangerous chemical in drinking water. Come on. Why aren't y'all mainstream news in this on the television so where people can turn on it to their news and hear breaking news of this? Why they're not mainstreaming it? Because they want you to be weak. They want you to be poisoned so that it's easy to conquer you when they come in. And they will come in by force. It's the whole reason for the wall. Now, if the wall can be used to keep people out, don't you think it can be work and vice versa to keep people in? Now, Facebook is social crediting people so that now they're trying to control how you move, whether you can fly, ride, or whatever through social credit. What? So if I say something about the government or something ain't right or anything that y'all say that's not right to be said on the internet, y'all gonna stop me from flying or from any type of federal transportation? Yes, they are already doing it to the Chinese civilians over there. Millions of them being revoked from flying because of their social credit score is bad. They're already doing it in China. And the thing what we don't understand, or what most people don't understand, is that China, Russia, and the European nations, they are all brothers. They are all brothers, family. They're all the same people, including the Germans, European, Portuguese, the Turkish, the so-called Jews. They're all the same people. They're all brothers. And they must destroy America in order to take the powers back to Rome. They must destroy the superpower city that they built. And that's what's going on. They're destroying America. And you're going to be consumed if you don't wake up and pay attention. We all are, because they already got the upper hand. They already have planned out, got all of us divided, brainwashed. And we just gonna let them if we don't do anything about it. Just gonna let them. And black people still gotta understand the black code still exists. If you don't know what the black codes are, I demand you go and research what's the black code. What are the black codes? By Jim Crow. Enforced by Jim Crow. Now at the same time, you have Trump trying to build a wall to keep out the immigrants, but yet you still letting them in thousands by the day into all the sanctuary states and cities. So are you putting up a border to stop them from getting in, but yet you're letting them in because you're taking orders from the United Nations, because the United Nations telling you you must let them in. When they know for a fact, when you overpopulate a country and there's not enough resources for the country, it brings it down. And they know that. Overpopulated country with not enough resources, it brings the country down. And the reason why they're allowing them to come into the sanctuary states and cities is because sanctuary states and cities have immigration enforcement law, which allows them to deploy the military onto the streets and force people by gun laws with guns in their face for deportation. That's very uncivil. Now, you have right here, White House confirms Trump is considering using the military to remove immigrants. White House deputy suppressed sanctuary Hogan Gidley downplayed reports Friday that the Trump administration was considering invoking the Insertion Act to remove immigrants from the country, but he didn't rule out that it was still on the table. So now Trump is considering using the Insertion Act, to force the immigrants out at gunpoint. That is their game plan. One moment. So they're going to force the migrants out by gunpoint using the Insertion Act. Now, let's see what the Insertion Act is. Okay, the Insurrectional Act. As it becomes more possible to play what President Bush called the blame game about the unnecessary, disastrous effect of Hurricane Katrina on New Orleans, it also becomes clear that the game divides fairly neatly into two parts, before and after. Before involves storm defense and enhanced despite clear warning of their wetlands not protected, evacuation buses not guarded, and Federal Emergency Management, FEMA, unit not deployed to Gulf Coast in a van. After it is about the week that began with the hurricane hitting and ending with the Superdome and the convention center empty, National Guard troops on the street, supplies available and the level breach repaired, and that included day after endless of incessant televised misery in between. Most of what is likely to be known about before it's already on the public record. After is a more shadowy matter, and disgrace of detail about it that have emerged so far make up a puzzling and incomplete picture. The Bush administration realized after the storm what it should have realized before it, that the state and local authorities in Louisiana were not going to be able to handle the hurricane aftermath effectively. Apparently, the administration tried to persuade the governor of Louisiana, Kathleen Blanco, to issue an official request that the federal government take control of the Louisiana National Guard and the New Orleans police. But she refused out of pride and mistrust or a desire to maintain some degree of control. Then the administration considered sending active duty federal troops to New Orleans to do what the National Guard and the police could not: make the streets and evacuation centers safe and decent, and decided not to. Whatever is fallen before the hurricane hit, the federal government could have greatly lessened the disaster if it had acted immediately afterward as a direct enforcer of the law. People suffered and died because it did not. All this backing and forth about powers of federal, state, and local government has a long history that explains a lot, not only about the aftermath of the hurricane, but about the underlying conditions in New Orleans that so shocked television viewers. Article of the United States Constitution gives the federal government the power to suppress the insurrection. This has always been a touchy subject, especially in the South, and most especially during the Reconstruction period. After the biggest insurrection in American history had been successfully suppressed, the Insurrection Act of 1807 outlines the script that the administration evidently wanted Governor Blanco to follow. A governor asked the president to federalize local law enforcement in order to suppress an insurrection. The president issued a proclamation ordering the insurgents to disperse. They don't. The cavalry rise to the rescue. But the president has the option of sending in troops without being asked, when the law isn't being enforced or the rights of a class of people are being denied. Now let me go over that again. But the president has the option of sending in troops without being asked, when the law isn't being enforced or the rights of a class of people are being denied, which was clearly the case in New Orleans. Not just because crime was rampant, but because so many people were trapped in hellish conditions. In 1992, President George H.W. Bush, who liked to build alliances before invading, sent federal troops to quell the Los Angeles riots after the governor requested him to. In 1957 and 1963, however, President Eisenhower and Kennedy sent troops to the South to enforce the civil rights of African Americans. It's no accident that all three invocations of the Insurrection Act had to do with the America dilemma throughout our history. The moment of greatest contention about federal power have involved race. The Reconstruction period ended with a
protracted and bloody conflict over the question of deploying federal troops in the South. In the South states with the largest black population, organized terrorist group arose that would do whatever it took, including murder, to ensure election victories by the Democratic Party, which was dominated by the former Confederates. The best means of suppressing the terrorists and ensuring free elections was to send in the Army. Congress made the use of troops easier or harder depending on who was in power in Washington. Laws passed in 1870 and 1871, the heyday both of the KKK and the radical republicanism, made it easier to use troops in the South. The Post-Reconstruction Post Act of 1878 and attempt to eviscerate the Insurrection Act by requiring an act of Congress before federal troops could be used made it more difficult. The issue of federal intervention and the issue of whether free slaves and their descendants will fully be citizens were essentially the same. Reconstruction ended with the withdrawal of federal troops in the 1877. They were withdrawn supposedly to restore normal governance in the former Confederate states, but the consequence was that those states, once there was nobody on hand to force them to obey the Constitution, took full citizenships away from African Americans. Yes. Took full citizenships away from African Americans. No state saw more conflict over federal power than Louisiana. A massacre of political actors black in New Orleans in the summer of 1866 helped set in motion the passage of constitutional amendments that made it illegal to deny civil rights and the rights to vote to anyone on the basis of race. President Grant sent federal troops to the Red River Valley after a notorious massacre there in 1873 and 1874. In 1874, federal troops were ordered to New Orleans after a Democratic white militia tried to overthrow the Republican state government. In 1875, federal troops marched onto the floor of the state legislatures to restore the Republicans to power after another coup detached by the Democrats. This last intervention was a event not because it enforced order once and for all, but because it horrified the nation. But you get that? Not because it enforced order once and for all, but because it horrified the nation, which in those days was not at all sure that it was in favor of the Negro rights. Before long, federal interventions in the South in the name of civil rights became a taboo so absolute that no president violated it for more than 3/4 of a century. It was all a plot. To keep Negroes from owning anything. This is not ancient history. The New Orleans ghettos that America got and looked at after the hurricane grew up during the time when the South, having successfully resided, the federal government imposed a secondary status on blacks. In the 1960s, the two major political powers reversed their Reconstruction era roles. The Democrats embraced civil rights and the South became Republican. Whoever in the Bush administration hesitated to invoke the Insurrection Act was partaking of a reflexive anti-governmentalism that pervades the administration. This Bush administration isn't hung up on building alliances. So they made sure that when this act is put into place, that everything goes accordingly. Now, when we hear the president saying that he's going to issue the Insurrection Act to force the immigrants out of the country, oh look, you're trying to target all of us. Because every time that the Insurrection Act got deployed, it was always against the African Americans. Regardless of what they said it was for, it always ended up on being an attack on the African American people. And this is what they're doing. They're setting up to attack us. And they're going to do it. This whole World War III is an attack on us, the U.S. citizens, and all the citizens across the globe. And we need to understand that. Because if we don't, they're going to consume us and everything that's about to go down. So, you guys stay prayed up. Do what you got to do, prepare, because it is coming. Thank you. And if you like the message that I just brought to you, you already know what to do. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell.